Another one of your book is called, actually no, I don't know the name of the book, but it's with Mouin Rabani about solving the Israel-Palestine conflict. So how do we do it?
Basically, to put it in a nutshell, if you're serious about politics and you're serious about trying to build a mass movement, you can't go beyond what the public is ready to accept. The public is ready to accept, in my opinion, what international law says. So if you were to put forth a very simple slogan, when you're asked, how do you want to solve it? I say, easy. All I want to do is enforce the law. The law is clear, it's unambiguous, it's uncomplicated. There is a near unanimous consensus on what the law says. And that's what I want to do. But the law is clear. The settlements are illegal, that's correct. East Jerusalem is occupied Palestinian territory, that's correct. The West Bank and Gaza are occupied Palestinian territory, that's correct. But it's also correct that Israel is a state. That's also the law. If you want to use the law as a weapon or as leverage in order to reach public opinion, you can't be selective with the law. You can't say, I have the right to walk at the green, but I'm kind of agnostic on the red. No. If you have the right to walk at the green, it's because you have an obligation to stop at the red. The law is a package deal. So if you want to use the law also says Israel is a state. And the problem with the solidarity movement is it's a kind of mirror image of the so-called Palestinian Authority. In my opinion, the Palestinian Authority, the so-called Palestinian Authority, I think its goals are correct. It always talks about international law and international legitimacy. Namely, what the law says, what the UN says, that's what they say they want. Their goals are correct. The problem is their means will never work because the Palestinians' main asset is the Palestinian people, the 4 million people of Palestine. And if you mobilize them, galvanize them, I don't think Israel has a prayer. Can't win. But the Palestinian Authority will never mobilize them because they're afraid if you mobilize them, the authority will meet the same fate as Mubarak and all the others because they're a gang of corrupt, wretched collaborators. So their goal is correct, but their means will never achieve their goal because all they want to do is bargain, behind closed doors with the Israelis. And the Israelis will never give them anything. Frederick Douglass, the American abolitionist, power never concedes anything without a demand. It never has, it never will. Unless you have the force to extract it from Israel, they will never give you anything. And the main force, the main weapon, is the people, and they'll never organize it. The solidarity movement, I think its means are correct to try to, I have no problem with the boycotts, divestment, sanctions, and all of that, nonviolent civil disobedience like the flotillas, the legal weapon like the attempt at universal jurisdiction. I think the means are right, but the goal will never fly. You want to say you're agnostic on Israel? You want to say you want one state? There's nothing in the international law for one state. You're not going to win a public to that. Once you step out of your little cult, your little ghetto, and you enter the real world, and you try to reach a broad public, and you say, we are a rights-based organization, which is what BDS likes to say, and we want to enforce our rights. Okay, the law. So once you step out of your ghetto, you're no longer just talking to yourself. There is the other side. They also make themselves heard. So they say, no, that's not true. They're lying. They say they want to enforce the law, but they really want to destroy Israel. They want to eliminate Israel. So now the public hears both sides. And they come back to the solidarity movement and they say, is that true? You want to destroy Israel? And then the solidarity movement says, oh, we don't have a position on Israel. We don't take a position. Oh, really? You don't take a position on Israel? Well, then we're not going to take a position on BDS. The law is clear. You want to use the International Court of Justice on your side? Okay, the International Court of Justice, it said, the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, they are occupied Palestinian territories. That's correct. But the ICJ also said that pre-June 67 border is Israel's legal border. That's their country. That's the law. You want to promote one state? Fine, that's your right. But then don't pretend you're trying to enforce the law. That's not true. You want to selectively enforce the law.
But I think the way I see it is that when you talked about the Palestinians, you said 4 million people. But what the BDS movement, and I think more and more that the Palestinian people in general wants to portray that the Palestinian people are not 4 million. There's the refugees, there is the citizens, Palestinian citizens of Israel. So it comes to a much bigger number. And I think just to conclude that the fact that not taking a position on do we want the state of Israel to exist, I think it's not saying that we want to destroy Israel, it's that saying that the 20% Israeli Palestinian citizens of Israel have the right to have the same rights than Israelis. So,
Frank, I'm not talking for the video. I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little bit exasperated with what I think is a whole lot of nonsense, you know? And I have been at this 30 years. I have earned my right to speak my mind, and I'm not going to tolerate what I think is silliness, childishness, and a lot of leftist posturing. There is a settlement that's been proposed by the international community for resolving the conflict. Now, it does include a statement, a just resolution of the refugee question based on UN Resolution 194, the right of return and compensation. There is nothing anywhere in the international consensus for resolving the conflict that says anything about the minority inside Israel, the Palestinian Arab minority. It's not there. You want to drag in that minority and start talking about them? Well, in my opinion, you'll get nowhere, because the whole world is filled with countries that persecute their minorities. Would you like to be an untouchable in India? Do you know what it's like to be a Dalit in India? Do you want to go through every country in the Middle East and how they treat their minorities? And then it's just open season by the other side to show what hypocrites you are. Why are you focusing on that minority and not 10 million other minorities in the world? If you look at, for example, when Yasser Arafat declared a state in November 1988, and you read the platform, the political document, and so forth, there's no mention of the Palestinian Arabs. There is a mention of the refugee question, that's correct. There's no mention of the Palestinian Arabs in Israel. People want to just drag in the kitchen sink because it's not really about them. I mean, we have to be honest. And I loathe the disingenuousness. They don't want Israel. They think they're being very clever. They call it their three-tier. We want the end of the occupation, we want the right of return, and we want equal rights for Arabs in Israel. And they think they're very clever because they know the result of implementing all three is what? What's the result? You know and I know. What's the result?
I think we don't.
There's no Israel.
I think there's
No.
but I think the result is like there's no Israel the way Israel is now.
There is no Israel, full stop. And the law is Israel is a state. It has its defined borders. And if you want to eliminate Israel, that's your right. But I don't think you're going to reach anybody. I think it's a non-starter. If you say you want to enforce the law, and in fact impose it on Israel, because they're not going to be accepted, then the law is clear. And you have to say, and you'll never hear the Solidarity Movement say, 2 states. Go look at the UN General Assembly resolution. It always begins, peaceful settlement of the Palestine question. The last part where they lay out the terms for resolving the conflict, they say a 2-state settlement, and then they say East Jerusalem, West Bank, Gaza, occupied Palestinian territories, settlements are illegal under international law, and a just resolution of the refugee question based on the right of return. But it's all within that framework. And if you don't want the framework, then stop talking about the law. And stop trying to be so clever. Because you're only clever in your cult. The moment you step out, you have to deal with Israeli propaganda. And here, they have a case. They say, no, they're not really talking about rights. They're talking about they want to destroy Israel. And in fact, I think they're right. I think that's true. I'm not going to lie. When I do politics, I have one standard. You know what my standard is? Can I defend this position in public? Not can I defend it in my little cult, but whether stepping outside my cult, whether I can defend it in public. And when I listened to Muin, because we spoke together in Boston, and Muin is writing the chapter in the book on the refugees, and I listened very carefully to him, because the division of labor was I'll do the settlements, he'll do the refugees, and we haven't had a chance. We've corresponded, but we haven't seen each other's positions yet. And I listened to him, and I didn't listen with the ear, is he right or is he wrong? Is what he's saying moral? Is what he's saying immoral? What I was listening was, can I defend it or can't I defend it? If I can't defend it, then what am I doing? What's the point? Do we want to build a movement or do we want to create a cult? Now, Frank, you have to be honest. Honesty is important in politics. If you tell a public, Israel's population is 7.5 million. Of those 7.5 million, 5.5 million are Jewish. And the other 2 million are Palestinian, Arab, and neither of the above. And you say, as a lot of the Solidarity movement says, all 6 million Palestinian refugees have to go back. Okay? Now, will a public think it's reasonable for 6 million Palestinians to descend on a country which right now has 1.8 million Palestinians and 5.5 million Jews, which means you're going to completely, overnight, radically, completely change the demographic balance in the country. Will a person, the public, find that reasonable? My answer is, you can give them every fact behind the creation of the refugees, and they'll still see the Israeli position that that's not tenable. I don't think you can sell it.
But I do think, I totally get your point, but I do think you're portraying a darker picture of the solidarity movement as really where it is now. I don't really hear people saying. I think people are very educated on the refugee issue, and I've never heard people saying 6 million refugees.
I hear it all the time.
Okay, so
Not never. I'm saying
actually,
reverse.
yeah.
I hear it all the time. I just spoke last night in Glasgow, and that was the first statement. What about the 6 million Palestinian refugees who want to return? That was the very first question. I hear it all the time. I hear sometimes people say until every one of the 7 million go back, we won't accept the settlement.